questions. Yeah. So yeah, first of all, thanks for joining us, guys. This is the second of our monthly live stream AMAs, and there's also a 200,000 subscriber landmark. So thanks to everyone who has subscribed and made that possible. Jumping into questions. First question is from Arthur Sheffer, who is a member, and members get priority on their questions. He asked, what were your favorite cars to drive on Jubbal and Cars? Jubbal and Cars is my newest YouTube channel. It's POV car reviews. And I don't know, issues again?
I'm sorry, what?
Issues?
The audio has a little bit of an echo to it.
Let's make sure that I have the right audio thing selected. Yeah, I have, oh, maybe it's because of this other one.
Yeah, it sounds like there's two audio recording.
How's this? Is this better?
There's like a 20-second delay or so.
Okay, so I'm gonna try just this, and hopefully that works.
Okay.
Let me know if it doesn't sound better though. So the favorite cars on Jubbal and Cars, favorite cars to drive were, I have this 997.1 Porsche GT3 from 2007 that I drove, and that review is coming out tomorrow, and that was, sweet. And that was by far my favorite car because it's such like a raw race car-like driving experience, and you don't really get that, especially from modern cars. So this one is, if you go really back, like very old cars usually don't have the same performance as modern cars, and this is like a nice kind of era where you had incredible performance and that raw, that kind of fun race car-like feeling. So that was a lot of fun. My friends who have their own car YouTube channels tell me that there are some other cars that if I like that, I'll like these other ones even more. Some other Porsches, GT2 as an example. But yeah, really excited about that. It's a lot of fun, that channel. So if you guys haven't already, check out Jubbal and Cars. I sent a message. Sorry guys, one sec. Someone said that they're taking the MCAT soon and that they appreciate Memm. First of all, good luck, my friend. The MCAT is something you can totally crush it with the right approach, with the right mindset. And thanks for checking out Memm. I'm glad that it was helpful for you. Benjamin Kazani. Okay, this is the question from the last live stream, but we're going to answer it again, which is, does the prestige of your medical school matter? And what a lot of people will say is that your college, your undergrad prestige matters more, and all med schools are the same. I don't really agree with that. That's like the more simplified version, I guess, because if you are going into a community program, so when it comes to residency, there's academic and community programs. Community programs are not at the big name research institutions like Johns Hopkins, Stanford, UCSF, etc. So those community programs are usually less competitive. And the prestige of your medical school, if you want to get into a residency program like that, is not as big of a deal. But if you want to go into either a very competitive specialty or an academic program, even in a not competitive specialty, then your pedigree does matter more. And pedigree is what they call like the schools that you trained at. So some of those bigger name institutions like Harvard, Stanford, etc., they may care more about what your pedigree is versus a program that isn't as much of an academic powerhouse research institution. So get into the best medical school that you can, but also keep in mind what your specialty interests are. If you have 2 med schools and you're interested in a very small specialty like plastic surgery or something else that's also small, then you want to make sure you go to a program that is not only prestigious but also has exposure to that specialty, because there are a lot of medical schools that have no plastic surgery program, and you have to work with community plastic surgeons rather than academic ones. But anyways, next question. Would taking a health administration major in undergrad help with starting your own practice after becoming a doctor? I think you'll learn some basics with health administration, but I think it's going to be more beneficial if you want to go into health admin as an employee rather than starting your own practice like a small private practice. Some people also ask about MBAs. Same thing, where if you want to be an employee and work for an institution, then that can be totally fine. But for doing your own thing, the greatest teacher for entrepreneurship is just doing things and trying out. Like you learn a lot more rapidly by actually trying to do entrepreneurship than reading about it. So, are we getting more questions? Is my thing not updating?
I'm adding more questions to the queue.
Make sure that this thing has internet. Okay, yeah, I'm getting a lot more questions now. This thing wasn't updating before. Top 5 favorite books. I do have a list of some of my favorite books on Med School Insiders. If you go to tools on the top right and then books for students, I think it's called, there are some books that I think are very helpful. Some more recent books that I've read that I haven't added there. One would be the Almanac of Naval Ravikant. I think that's a very good book on higher order level thinking and just how your perspective is going to shape a lot of the decisions and the outlook you have in your life. That's a really, really good one. Very short read too. In terms of fiction, I've been enjoying Barry Eisler's the John Rain series. So the first book is called A Clean Kill in Tokyo. I read that one. I read the second one. I'm now on the third book, and there's like, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 books in the series. I'm really enjoying that too, getting back into fiction. And as for other ones, I have a Goodreads actually. If you go on Goodreads and you search for me, then I list all the books that I've ever read. Well, most of the books that I've ever read, and I rate them. So the ones that have 5 stars are probably ones that I would say these are really solid. Yeah, I need to sign in. I'm not gonna do that right now. Are you going to upgrade from your BRZ? Benjamin, if you saw my recent video on Jubbal and cars, I actually bought the 2022 GR86, and that is my upgrade. I'm getting rid of my 2013 Scion FRS. I love the platform. It's just for becoming a better driver, and that's my main goal. I think some people have different goals and motivations for choosing a certain car. Some people want comfort. A lot of people, especially when they're younger, care about like the flex appeal, how flashy it is, how impressive it is, how cool it is. And I'm less concerned with that. I care more about what car is going to be the tool or the instrument that allows me to most rapidly accelerate my own driving progression. And that new 2022 GR86, I think, is going to be the right tool. And it's also just a great car all around, very comfortable, a big upgrade from the first gen, except for the steering. The steering is not as good. Most valuable piece of advice you received going into residency? I mean, there's that saying from the House of God, eat when you can, sleep when you can, and don't mess with the pancreas. And I mean, that's more general surgery, pancreas, GI surgery. But the main thing there was like the importance of using any downtime you have for productive pursuits is the main takeaway I got from that. So whenever you did have downtime, I mean, I think I kind of overdid some of the whole time optimization in residency such that it wasn't really sustainable. But a lot of those principles, I think if you aren't trying to do a surgical residency plus Okay. Video and audio should be back.
Okay. You gotta give it like 15 seconds or so.
Sorry guys, we're having a lot of technical difficulties this time. Things were smoother last time. Not sure what's different, what the issue is, but hopefully this will work now. Okay.
Okay, it looks like we have video back.
We're good?
Video and audio.
Audio's good? Okay, thank you. Some good questions. Do you think that the MCAT is a fair tool to use for the judgment of premeds? Is there something better that we could use to replace it? The MCAT is definitely not perfect, right? Does it indicate who's going to make the best possible physician? Obviously not. But is it an important metric testing certain, I guess, intellectual or cognitive aspects of their ability? Sure. Is it perfect? Definitely not. So I don't think that we have a tool that we're like, oh yeah, this is hands down better. One thing with step one becoming pass-fail, a lot of people before the decision was made were quoting things like, it doesn't show who's going to be a good doctor, and it adds too much stress. I hope the same thing doesn't happen with the MCAT, because then think about if MCAT went pass-fail, which I don't think is going to happen, but like a thought exercise, if it did, are there any objective measurements that, other than GPA, that programs get a lot of applicants, but medical schools get orders of magnitude more applicants compared to residency programs. So it gets really overwhelming really fast, and they need ways to have cutoffs or screen applicants and whatnot. So one thing that also has really helped me in the my education journey is not really getting too caught up in whether I enjoy something or not, but trying to I disabled the camera briefly, but audio should be live.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Audio, let me see. Okay, yeah, we're good.
Okay. All right, we're back. So the Sony camera was not working out, so we're gonna try this. My
Wait.
no.
Don't tell me camera cut out again. Oh, okay, wait. You disabled camera, so.
MacBook Pro microphone now.
Yeah, audio I have. I don't know if okay, yeah. We're good.
We're good. I think this is why I have to. Test. Can you hear me? I guess we're gonna find out. Sorry guys, technical difficulties, but let's see what else we got. Favorite memory or accomplishment of 2022 so far? Isn't it amazing how fast time goes, and it's already more than halfway through the year? That's wild. I haven't done anything super wild or crazy. Like September last year, we did a 200 or 260 mile bike ride, 100 miles on one day, 105 miles the other day, and like 55 miles the third day. So that was, I guess, 2021. 2022, I don't know, man. Hopefully something hopefully do something pretty big and epic before the end of the year. Is audio and video okay?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. All right. How to stay mentally strong and staying motivated. Good question. Hard question to answer on a live stream like this. The reason this is such a good question is because your mindset is arguably more important than what actually happens to you in certain ways. And I mean, I guess you could think of some exceptions to that rule, but for most of us, it's your self-talk. And what has helped me looking back is journaling, because through journaling, I'm forced to put down my thoughts in a more linear and sensible way. 'Cause sometimes when they're in your head, they kind of bounce around and some things are kind of repeating, and sometimes you're making these kind of jumps that don't quite make sense, and you don't notice that until you put it down on paper. And when you start doing that, you become more intentional and more aware of your self-dialogue, and you can then catch those tendencies that aren't helpful. So things like if you're too harsh on yourself, right? And I know for me in the past, there was, I guess it's still a work in progress, but there was a lot of judgment in certain things that I felt very disappointed, very judgmental of missing an arbitrary mark that I set for myself in my head. And being more compassionate and actually leaning into acceptance to be like, you know what? This is what it is. Like, I'm now 31 years old, and this trait is a trait that's part of who I am. And when you come from a place of acceptance rather than resistance and trying to change things, then you end up being happier, and then almost paradoxically, you can be more effective at making those changes. Are we good?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Why did you choose Loma Linda for residency? Why not a bigger name program? So when you're choosing a residency program, you need to figure out what your priorities are for yourself. And when you go on the interview trail, I'm forgetting how many programs I interviewed at, 15-ish, something like that. Then you're going to prioritize or deprioritize certain things. So one thing that also residency interviews are during the winter, so you get to see what's the winter like in Ohio. Oh my God. If you're a Cali boy like me, born and raised. So certain things will come up. Part of it is going to be location. Part of it is going to be the actual strengths of the program. Part of it is going to be the people. Actually, a big part is the people and the fit and how you feel at a certain place. So every program has a different feel, a different fit, a different vibe. And you get to interact with the attendings and the residents. And that depends on your priorities. But for me, that was a very big part of my ultimate rank order list, as well as location. Oh, and I love the, okay, another thing actually for surgery, especially in plastic surgery, there are certain programs that are bigger name programs. And actually, I interviewed at one of these programs that, I'm not going to say which one, but it was a big name, great location. I was like, oh, this place is solid. But they have a lot of residents, and you don't actually get that much exposure. And they in the specialty, they joke that, oh, if you don't want to operate, then you go to this program, which is an exaggeration, obviously. But another thing that I really liked about Loma Linda was that they really do emphasize your clinical skill. My first day, it wasn't even July 1st. I started residency, it was like June 29th or like June 3rd, like literally day one of intern year. I had the scalpel in my hand, and I was doing a Dupuytren's contracture release. And obviously I wasn't doing the whole case, but I was like, there was parts where I was actually the one who was doing the dissection. So that to me is arguably more important, because at the end of the day, when you talk to residents who are training, sorry, I'm spending a lot of time on this question. Talk to residents who are training, a big thing that a lot of people say at a lot of programs is that they don't feel comfortable being out on their own, and then they want a fellowship and whatever. So for me, choosing a program that also did a good job in making residents feel like they were clinically very proficient was a high priority. Okay, on to the next one. How do you meet and network with other medical students with similar interests like surgery? At your program, they probably will have some interest groups, and for various specialties, there's going to be a pathology interest group, a general surgery interest group, etc., etc. So get involved with one of those. If you don't have one at your school, then don't be afraid to start one. They don't take that much time. Did you ever have to give any kind of bad news to patients or families? If so, any advice? Actually, yeah. I remember. I'm not going to get into too many of the specifics, but I will say the way that you put yourself in their shoes and think of what would make them feel the most comfortable and supported. They're going to have a lot of questions. Things will sometimes hit them like a wall. It's going to be so disorienting, and being patient, giving them time, that is very important. And depending on your stage in training, resident versus med student versus, you're not going to be doing this pre-med, but as a med student, you'll probably have like your resident around to help with that process. And it depends on what the news is, because like the bigger deals, they're just going to handle themselves. They're not going to have you handle that until you're a resident anyways. Child prodigy who is accepted to med school at 13. I have not heard of that. That's pretty wild. There were a couple students in my class who were like 17 or 18 when they started med school, which is also like super early in the US. What's your advice for med school interviews? How do you prepare, and how do I make sure I don't stutter? I feel like appear shy / introverted during first encounters. I don't want to avoid this. The main thing is going to be practice. So at your school, you can do mock interviews with the career center. That's a very common option. The main downside there is that the people that you're working with aren't those who've actually served on med school admissions committees. The other option is going to companies like Med School Insiders or similar med school admissions consulting companies that do have actual doctors that do serve on med school admissions committees, and they can tell you what they're looking for, what's going to help, what's not. But getting those reps in is going to be very, very important. Before you even start working, before you even do some mock interviews, like sit down just by yourself and go through some of the more common questions and think what you want to answer. And it's not about memorizing. It's about like just making sure you hit a few key points. And the more times you do it, the better you'll get. Just be careful of memorizing canned responses, because those come across very inauthentic, and you don't want to be just rehearsing something that you memorized. That doesn't come across good either. How much minimum study should you do as a med student to do decently? Depends on the person, depends on your goals. If you are gunning for the top of your class, you're going to have to study more per day. If you're just super talented at test taking, then you'll have to study less per day. If I have some friends who were like, dude, I'm like trying to do community family med, and like I want to enjoy my life because life is short, and I'm in my 20s, and that, which is totally valid too. You're not going to have to study as much. So it's really variable. Peter Andrews, M2 at Mizzou Med. Hey Peter, thankful for all your help and insight over the years. Thanks for watching, man. What year of med school did you decide to go into plastics, and how did you come to that decision? It was my third year of med school, and it was from seeing cases in the OR. The girl I was dating at the time, before my surgery rotation, because I had surgery third, she told me that plastic surgery is probably a good fit for you. And I said, I'm not really interested in like breast implants, breast augmentation, rhinoplasties, etc. And she said, oh, no, there's like this whole reconstructive side that is really, really fascinating and seems to be right up your alley. And one of the first cases, actually the first case I saw, was an animated latissimus dorsi transfer, which was a joint plastic surgery and neurosurgery case. And that was like, I've talked about it before in some videos. It was wild. That was when I was like, okay, I know what I'm doing with it for the rest of my life. Except obviously not. All right. Chris Arellano asks, how did you pick up business skills to build MSI? I had my first tutoring company with my brother in high school, and that came about because he and I would tutor people on our own, but through word of mouth, we got too many inbound leads. We couldn't tutor everyone because we're students. We can't just full-time tutor all the time. And we then started hiring started contracting out to some classmates, some friends and such that we also felt were well qualified. And that was like the first business experience. That was pretty like, we never did any online like back then. This is the aughts. So, because I graduated high school in 2008, and so it was like a good stepping stone. And then in med school, there was an interest group for the future of medicine, and I started learning more about entrepreneurship. I thought it was really fascinating. And then Blue Link, which I started to bring something similar to Stanford's biodesign to UC San Diego, and that gave me a lot more experience. And then I started the YouTube channel, and the way you learn is by doing, more so than like the most I learned, like 99% of what I learned was just from starting it and going at it, rather than trying to read and research and get degrees and stuff like that. Ronald Raman Henkel says, by the way, I just joined the Premed roadmap course. All I gotta say is it's 1000% worth the money. Dude, thanks. I am so glad that it's helpful. And again, if you ever have feedback or things come up and you're like, hey, I think this should be included in the course, then send us a message, because we're always trying to improve our products and our offerings. Would you say lesser known / smaller residency programs are generally more cush and better if you want to go into private practice than prestigious institutions? It's going to be super dependent on the institution. So no, I would not say that it is something like when you start grouping programs by various factors. A big one is geography. Like, in surgery, if you go on the East Coast, it's more like the old school and like more intense, and West Coast is more chill. There's a lot of variation. I can think of one program in SoCal that is extremely rigorous, extremely hardcore, can be extremely toxic in plastic surgery. But so like there's always going to be exceptions to these rules, and trying to group programs together I don't think is very reliable like that. How to watch F1 during rounds. Yo, this is okay, real talk. So you're trying to watch Formula One, and sometimes they happen the time of day is dependent on the every race is different. So what you want to do is you want to make sure you don't check social media and don't have any of your friends message you about the race, spoiling the results. And what you do is you watch the race, like you save it on your DVR or whatever, and you watch it later on in the day, that night or whatever. And the key thing is, like, you can't go on Instagram, because you probably follow some of your favorite drivers. You probably follow Formula One on Instagram. And if you open up Instagram, then boom, you're going to see the podium finish, and like you just ruined the race, right? So the secret there, I think, is to watch it later in the day when you get back. Would you ever create a pre-PA program? Right now, probably not. We got a lot that we still want to do with the pre-med path and the med student path, but maybe in the future, who knows? Advice for preparing for Step 2 CK, depending on how early you are. So if you are approaching Step 2 CK and you're starting your third year, then the main thing you want to do is really do the best you can on your self-exams. And one thing that I went over in a Step 2 CK video on Med School Insiders is how you want to do Anki cards in a single deck. That's called Step 2 CK. And then let's say you start with IM first. You're doing all these IM cards, and then you do PEDS next. You add those PEDS cards to the same deck. So now you're reviewing those old IM cards as well as the new PEDS cards. But because of the way that spaced repetition works, you're going to be seeing mostly PEDS cards and only occasionally IM cards, because you have mastery of that content you already studied. But because it's in the same deck and you're seeing them at greater and greater intervals, it's keeping it fresh enough that you don't forget it, so that when you do study for Step 2 in 9 months, 12 months, whatever it is, that things are fresh and you're gonna have a really solid foundation of knowledge. I remember when I scored high 260s on Step 2, and when I first started my study period, I think I hit a 265 on my first practice test before I had 3 more weeks of studying after that. And that's because I had that strong foundation from doing Anki cards for the preceding year. How important are third year clerkship grades for matching plastics and derm? Did you have all honors? I did not have all honors. I remember my psych rotation, I got a what was it, a high pass? Whatever was below honors for us. I think it was high pass. And Yeah, I was like really unhappy with that because I didn't agree with some of the things that happened on that rotation. I think I got unlucky with a few different things, but hey, life happens. But yeah, you do want to crush your third year clerkships. You want to get honors in all of them if possible, or as many as possible, because that's going to make you definitely a much stronger candidate for competitive specialties. All right, some other questions. Grab some tea real quick. All right. I wish I had a place to like put this. Let's see. Give me 1 sec, guys. All right, can we do that? That's a little bit more comfortable. Okay, so Brandon Gordon asked a very important question about Formula One, which is Verstappen or Hamilton. I am definitely Team Hamilton, man. Team Lewis, Team Hamilton. I think that there are a lot of things that I really admire about his story, his background, his skills. Verstappen is obviously an extremely talented driver. I mean, last year, I think you'll see people that there were many instances, many events between the two where people chose sides, and I tried to be neutral as much as possible, but I would say most of the time I felt like Hamilton was in the right, and I feel like Verstappen's just a bit too aggressive sometimes. Is med school still worth $500K in debt? Asks Nick. That's a lot of debt. I mean, I would suggest first trying to go to a program that's going to be lower cost, both in tuition and in your living expenses. And it also depends on which school you're going to. Like if you were going to Caribbean, I would say like that's very risky because the chances of you matching successfully, completing it, etc., is going to be lower. And then also specialties that you're able to match into are generally going to be lower paying on average, not always, but on average. So the calculus there is not really looking very favorable. Try to find a cheaper program if possible. It's not a hard no by any means, but 500K is like that's a lot of debt for med school. And if you go into primary care, family medicine, it's gonna be a long time until you can pay that off. Research year before applying to residency, yes or no? Competitive specialties, it's almost becoming required these days. Not literally, but more and more people are doing it. It helps a lot with your application. And even if you aren't going to a super competitive specialty, but you want to go match really, really strongly, then it's generally going to be very beneficial. And we're working on a research course, which will be addressing a lot of the questions on how to make the most of your research experiences and even navigate the process, not just from a perspective of how do you do research, but how do you do research in the most effective way to strengthen your application either for medical school or for residency. What do you think of the Remnote app for taking notes and doing active recall / spaced repetition? I haven't looked into it that much. I've seen just a bit about it, so I can't really comment. Diego Chavez, intern, gen surge, first 3 weeks has been pretty easy so far. Is it going to always be like this? Depends on what those first 3 weeks are for you. So if you're on your general surgery rotation, like are you an intern in gen surge as a specialty and you might be on a different service? In that case, like yeah, like when I was on optho, our optho residency rotation was super cush, but general surgery is not really something that is very relaxed in most programs. All right. Fun-sized Twinkie asks, Rising M2, thank you for all your content throughout the years. Thank you for watching. How much did you study before your M2? I've hit a point where I can't study much at home. I always preferred studying at home versus at the library. Actually, no, that's not true. I studied a lot in the med school in my preclinical years. see if you can change your environment at home so that it is conducive to studying. I think that makes things a lot easier, but a lot of people can study successfully at the library or at coffee shops or at the school without issue. But how much did I study before my M2? I mean, during that summer, I was doing more research than studying. I wasn't really focusing on step 1 as much until like September. Yeah. Ayushi Sutaria asks, would you have quit if you were an anesthesiologist if you wanted to become an entrepreneur as well? What's your opinion on that? I don't know, man. I know that anesthesiology residency, you're working fewer hours, you have more downtime compared to something like plastic surgery. So maybe. I don't really know. It's a good question, though. What would be your last choice specialty? Probably primary care, because I'm not the most patient person, and I think primary care requires a lot of patience, and it's a lot of like counseling, and for me, I would just be, I think doing that for a couple months, fine, but like doing that year after year after year would just be challenging for my personality type. Tips for starting a business during medical school. I want to start a business during medical school. I mean, there's so many different factors. I know I met this one girl recently who has a very impressive business and who's actually considering not pursuing residency because her business has been doing so well. If you're working with others, you need to choose your co-founders very carefully. If you're doing something solo, then make sure you're approaching it in a way that's sustainable. So if you're about to enter your 3rd year, don't start a business right then. Obviously, there's going to be up with that during 3rd year. If you already started it end of 1st year, and then by the time 3rd year rolls around, you're still working on the business, but you have some systems in place, you have some momentum, you have some things delegated, then that's more sustainable. So just approach it with sustainability and be very careful with who you work with are probably the two first things that come to mind. How much time did you spend studying after M2 for step 1? Our dedicated period, I believe, was 6 weeks. I took my test 5 weeks in, and then I had a 1-week vacation where I went on a little cruise. But I think I started my dedicated like a week before that, so I think I had 6 weeks of dedicated, because the last week I think we had some class, skipped it, and just did the bare minimum like tests and whatnot. So that was dedicated, but then I started my step 1 studying the prior year. I took it in April or May, and I started studying at a much lower intensity the prior fall, but I started ramping it up around December of the prior year. How are you enjoying your new GR86? That's the new car I got. I think it's an awesome car. I got it in blue, which is a lot more fun than my prior color of white, even though white also looks good. The fit and finish, the comfort, the road noise, all better. The power is the biggest jump, but the one thing that I'm disappointed by is the steering feel. It's not as like lively with feedback as that first gen.
We are getting a little bit of lag. I'm not sure.
Like it's choppy?
Yeah, it's kind of choppy. Well, it's kind of back to normal now. It's kind of coming in and out.
Okay, let me know if it's like unwatchable or anything, or if it's like a big problem, because I don't know what else to do. I mean, we tried the. Next time we'll have to do like a hardwire Ethernet or something. See if that helps.
Yeah.
Will you be doing more day in the life videos? Yeah, day in the life videos, they take a lot of time, guys. Like they are. It's just not sustainable for us to do a new day in the life every month or anything. Like maybe a couple per year. It's just because I go and I film, and it's the whole day. I'm oftentimes traveling. I'm not sleeping much. It kind of eats into the following day. Like it's a huge ordeal, and we do that because it brings a lot of value to you guys. But it's not something that's
that we can keep cranking out. We actually have 2 more in the works right now that are already filmed. So one will be coming out, I think, in August, and one will be coming out either September, October. But that's unusual. Normally, we're going to be doing one every other month, like that, moving forward. But stay tuned. More to come. Let's see what else we got. So, have you ever considered completing a short family medicine residency so you can at least practice medicine and still do entrepreneurship on the side? You could work in primary care once a week and have 6 days left for entrepreneurship. I get a lot of questions like this, which is so funny to me. Because there were some other questions, I can't find it right now, about like the idea is that because I left residency and I'm not practicing clinically, that I threw something away, or like, oh, you trained to do this, you should like finish something. I am using the experiences in a way for my business that I couldn't do this business if I didn't have those experiences. So I am very much leveraging. I don't feel like any of my prior experiences have been wasted at all. But no, I don't plan on going back to residency. And then also, if I were just to practice 1 day a week, in your first few years as an attending, I mean, you learn most of what you learn in residency to practice as in this case, he gave the example of family medicine. But when you're in practice, you're also still very much learning in those first few years. And then for me to practice once per week, I would feel like I'm not doing the patients the justice that they deserve in terms of giving the best possible care, because I'm only practicing 1 day per week, you know? So no, I'm not going to be going back to residency. All right. T. Ghani asks, how do I choose a specialty? I'm starting first year med school and thinking of research. I want to do something related to a specialty I choose for residency. Choose something for research that you are interested in right now, but understand that it is very possible that you'll change your mind. And I did pediatric gastroenterology research between my first and second year, and adult GI research during college, and then I ended up pursuing a different specialty entirely, and that's fine. They understand that you'll have time to do research specific to that specialty in the future. And in terms of choosing a specialty, I have multiple videos on Med School Insiders on how to choose a specialty, and I would point you there because there's a little bit of a systemic way of approaching it and making decisions like binary yes no. So yeah, check those out. Do you still ride a bike? Have you done any more Century rides? Asks Jake Legacy 650. No, I haven't done any Century rides since then. I feel like me and my friends. Actually, one of my friends from that bike ride is visiting tonight. But I know at least 3 of us were like, oh my god, that was exhausting, and it was more so like the pain on the saddle, like on your groin, perineum, etc. And a lot of us just like stopped riding for a month or 2 after that. And I've been leaning back into it, but I've been having some issues with my new bike fit. I got a new bike, and it's a little bit more aggressive than my old bike, and I'm getting it fitted right now, and we're waiting for a new saddle to come in. I want to get back to riding more often, but I have not been riding very frequently. I've just been doing like the trainer inside the house. How much did so Emily Q asks, how much did your high school / what you did in high school impact your medical career and path? Not really very much. I will say, actually, well, I don't know if this is high school. So ever since I was young, my mom would often say that I needed to take it easy and not be so intense and be so competitive and always try to be number one. And it was just like, I put a lot of pressure on myself. So I think that part of me, I definitely leaned more into that in high school. I remember being very proud that I never got anything less than an A in high school. And I always, I would try to do my best on tests and get the highest score that I could. And that was more about work ethic and drive and focus, more so than I don't like learning those key fundamental things those foundations helped me in college. But if you don't have that, you can still really crush and be really successful in the medical career path. It just depends on when you decide to lean into that. And the longer you do it, the better skilled you are, and the more you're able to lean into your focus, lean into your intensity, lean into your work ethic, and all that stuff. All right. So let's see what else we got. Ronald Rahman Henkel asks, how can the issue of imposter syndrome be addressed, and did you go through it in your years in college and med school? This is good that this question's coming up again, because I addressed a similar question last time, but I wasn't really... Someone called me out. They're like, hey man, that wasn't quite imposter syndrome that you were addressing. That was more like my fear of public speaking that I was addressing. I'm sure I did. I think I felt imposter syndrome when I was like presenting certain things. Like I remember we presented to Janet Napolitano, the UC president, and like the deans of all the schools. So like it was a very big presentation. So I think that's why I talked about the public speaking last time, because that was the setting in which I felt the imposter syndrome. But practical advice on how to address it in college and med school. I think what often leads to imposter syndrome is when people try to do the whole fake it till you make it, and as a result, they feel like because they faked it that they don't really deserve the outcome or the success, etc., that they have. And if you focus less on faking it and focus more on doing hard things and just realizing that you can handle challenging things and you can get through it, then that is a way to combat the development of imposter syndrome for sure. That's how you get true self-confidence. Does taking the MCAT multiple times, 4+ appear negatively to prospective medical schools? Yeah, you do the MCAT twice, not a big deal. But if you're taking the MCAT 4 times, and it depends on what your score progression is too, but that's generally not going to be viewed favorably. That doesn't mean you shouldn't ever do it. Like if you did the MCAT 3 times and there were weak scores all 3 times, then you may want to take it a 4th time. And if that 4th time has a much stronger score, then that's going to be a net positive to your application. Is it suboptimal in the sense that you took the MCAT 4 times? Yeah, absolutely. That's also lost opportunity cost, right? The time where you could have spent developing other parts of your application. But a lot of these are like very complex and nuanced decisions that it's hard to just give a black or white answer to. Did you prefer study groups or study alone, asks Peter Smith. From my experience, studying with one other person is beneficial. You get some motivation, you get some fun, you get some social aspect. You feel like someone else is in it with you, you don't feel so alone. But once I had 2 other people or more, I found that it was just the utility dropped pretty drastically, and the risk of us getting distracted was like just exponentially rised. So I liked studying with a partner maybe half the time, and then I would study solo the other half the time probably. Do a lot of residents date during residency? Schedule seems intense. So people tend to date. You tend to date what you get exposure to. So you also have to keep in mind that the landscape is changing, where 10 years ago, online dating wasn't nearly as prevalent as it was today. So then we would probably see a higher proportion of people dating within the hospital, whether that's other residents or other healthcare staff. Whereas now with online dating, I think that the proportion is likely decreasing. Do a lot of residents still date other residents? Yeah, for sure. You say the schedule seems intense, which is correct, but where'd that go? But the benefit is that those residents are going to understand your schedule, and oftentimes people who aren't in medicine, especially during your residency training, are not going to be as understanding of your time constraints. All right, just a couple more minutes, because what time do we start? This one?
This one. It's probably coming on an hour now.
I think it's probably like 40 minutes. Let's let me take a brief pause. Let me get some more tea, and then am I able to pause this live stream? Stop streaming. No, it's gonna stop the whole thing. Let me just disable video and. Hey guys, short 2-minute intermission, and we'll be right back. All right, guys, sorry about that. We are back. Okay, so. Where are these questions? Okay. All right. Victor Spitz asks, what non-surgical specialty you think have the best balance between clinic/consults and cool procedures? Love the procedures and like clinic, but can't see myself doing just one of them. You know, that's really going to be dependent on what you find interesting. So what I find cool and in terms of cool procedures is very different from someone else. Like, I may not like laparoscopic cases. Maybe you do, right? So get exposure, just like lean into your curiosity and your interests. The So You Want to Be series, the video series, is a great place to just kind of get an overview, to kind of filter out what you probably won't like, what you might, and then from there try to shadow and get actual clinical experience, surgical experience, OR experience, and decide from there. Peter Smith, coffee or tea? My man. I think we're doing coffee or tea. I mean, you already know the answer to that. Hi, Kevin. This is from Pedro Camargo. Firstly, thank you for all the great content over the years. Thank you for watching, Pedro. I'm a newly graduated MD in Brazil. Congrats. And I've been thinking over going into entrepreneurship as a doctor. Any advice for starters? I'll say the first thing that comes to mind is make sure you are leveraging some unique advantage that you have. So I know a friend who wanted to start a business. It was like making some leather goods, and it didn't really leverage his training path as a physician. It didn't really give him much of an advantage, and he ended up dropping that business idea. And not surprisingly, because it's a crowded, competitive space, very low market, low barrier to entry. So if you're going to do something in the entrepreneurial space, then try to leverage your medical training, your background, something that any unfair advantages that you may have. What are unique strengths that you may have, and that's a good place to start. Kyle asks, I really enjoy your content. Do you have any important advice for a non-traditional medical school applicant other than the basics like GPA, MCAT, volunteer research? So for a non-traditional applicant, it depends on how much time you had off between college and med school. But a big thing, like if you took a long period of time off, make sure you've given a lot of thought as to why you want to do this, if it's worth it. Like really give it a lot of thought and try to get experience to see if it is really what you want to do. I have met some people who regret their decision and they do med school and they don't pursue residency because they felt like it wasn't what they were expecting. And there are a couple of non-traditionals like that. And then also when you're applying to med school, they want to make sure that you're really bought in, that you're really you're not going to drop out. And yeah, so that's going to serve multiple functions there. For IMG, this is from I'm everywhere. For IMG, would I have better chances with GI fellowship if I complete residency in my country first, or try applying for US residency first? So in the US, you need to to practice in the US, you generally need to complete a US residency. So if you do residency somewhere else and then you do some fellowship training afterwards, and you want to do the fellowship training in the US, like it's going to depend on, generally speaking, you're going to need to complete residency here. Yeah, that's something that you'll probably need to look. There's going to be some specifics that are going to vary based on programs, based on residency, based on fellowship, based on what country you're coming from, etc. But keep that in mind. When you were in med school, what was your experience like with the older med students? This is from Jake Legacy 650. Older med students were pretty helpful. Like I asked questions and how to approach step one, how to approach clinical rotations, and there were a few that were like extremely helpful. And they even created these multi-page Google Docs that really they were passionate about teaching the younger classes. So they were fantastic. How to becoming an early morning person. You gotta force yourself and understand that it's gonna suck at the beginning, where the transition phase of going from a night owl to morning person is gonna be rough. But after that especially the first couple days, and then it gets easier. But then even still, the first week or two kind of sucks, and then you learn to adapt, and you may need to change some of your habits. Maybe you don't drink caffeine as late in the day, but you are, from my experience, you are able to achieve consistency and not be miserable with varying circadian rhythm schedules, and you're not really locked into just one. There's one that's like optimal for you, but you have flexibility and you can switch and still not be miserable. So if you're like a night owl, you can become a morning person, at least for a few months, or whatever your job requirements are. What is your dream car? Right now, I would say Porsche Cayman GT4 RS, except it doesn't come with a stick shift, and I really like stick. I think driving stick is much more enjoyable. So maybe just a regular Cayman GT4. Yeah, let's go with that. Oh, but then like really dream cars, Lexus LFA, even though that's not stick. Oh, Carrera GT, because that comes in stick too, and it's beautiful and it sounds amazing, and yeah, Carrera GT is definitely up there. Toyota 2000 GT as well. Okay, I'm not gonna spend too much time. I should keep going on that thread. Let's see. Okay, advice for preparing for step 2. I think I already addressed that. What are your current fitness goals, and are you reaching them with your coach? I have some fitness goals that are multi-year. Like, it's not gonna. I won't be able to achieve them this year or next year. It's gonna take a long time. And am I making more progress now after working with my coach compared to before? Yeah, absolutely. Definitely some blind spots, things that I didn't even consider. Things like sympathetic and parasympathetic balance. Things like even with nutrition, I thought I had dialed it in certain ways, but there's still room for growth for sure. So yeah, I'm making more accelerated progress right now. Absolutely. Let's see. Can you still match a lower ranked derm/plastics program if you have a weaker app but are coming from a top 5 med school? This is from the Broccoli Man. Broccoli Man, I'm going to say that your application strength is much more important than your pedigree. So an already strong applicant coming from a top 5 med school is going to definitely add to your application. But if you have a mediocre app coming from a top 5 school, isn't that much of a value add. So it's more important. Would I rather, who's going to have a better chance? A mediocre applicant coming from a top 5 program or a really strong applicant coming from a mediocre program? I would say the latter. Let's see what else we got. What is your advice for students who are passionate about medicine but afraid of the future of the profession? Depends on what you're afraid of. And like if you were afraid of reimbursement going down, then dermatology, plastic surgery are specialties where you can easily create a cash-based practice and be more immune to that, right? If you're more concerned about charting and burnout from that, which is a very real concern, then specialties like emergency medicine and primary care are going to be more susceptible. So it depends on what you're concerned about. Get exposure to the field, because what's most important. Will the field continue to change? Sure, but it's by and large, most things are going to be. It's going to change a little bit. It's not going to be like a totally different beast. So make sure that what it is right now is something that you are okay with, and obviously shadow, get exposure, things like that. The 100, where do you see yourself in 10 years? Oh man, that's a good question. In 10 years, I'd like to think that I would have a family. I would probably not be living here anymore. I'd probably be living either still in Las Vegas or in San Diego, one of the two places. In terms of work, med school incentives would have continued to grow. Memm would have continued to grow. Still be involved with both of those. And then the car YouTube channel would be a lot of fun. I'm sure I'll be doing some other entrepreneurial things too by that point. I think there's a lot of fun in starting new projects with entrepreneurship. So that's a good question though. I should spend more time. I used to do like a 5-year plan every year as like part of this like journaling exercise. And actually I think I did one this last year too. I should reflect on that. Yadu Jitesh asks, favorite F1 team? I care more about drivers than the actual teams, because like it's the personality of like everyone loves Daniel Ricciardo. I mean, has he been struggling recently? Absolutely. I care more about Daniel Ricciardo more so than McLaren. You know what I mean? I care more about Lewis Hamilton more so than Mercedes. So I love Charles Leclerc. I love Lewis Hamilton. I love Daniel Ricciardo. I think Lando Norris is pretty funny. I think he's a cool guy. Yeah, those are some of my favorite drivers. What is better, DO or MD school? Asks Claudia Argote. I talk about this. I actually made a video just a couple days ago, maybe last week, about MD versus DO. And a lot of people on social media, a lot of other doctors, a lot of admin, a lot of pre-med advisors, a lot of people that don't know what they're talking about as well, will tell you that they're both the same, which is nonsense. Can you practice as a physician as either? Absolutely. Can they both make for great physicians? Absolutely. But when you are a pre-med and you're choosing which school to choose, there are definite advantages and disadvantages there. And for almost every student, for almost every pre-med that I have ever advised, and So I've been doing advising for some years, and you know, our company now has 5,000 plus students that have used our services. It's almost always, not every single time, but almost always better to go MD versus DO for a pre-med. When you look at the cost benefit analysis, the upside versus the downside, you are generally better off trying to get into an MD school, unless you really care about incorporating OMM. But that again is more of the minority and is actually much more uncommon than I expected. Felix Sanjay asks, unrelated, I know, but thoughts on the new GR Corolla? I think it's fantastic that, I mean, Toyota's been crushing it. Toyota, like the Supra, the GR86, the GR Corolla, the GR Yaris, they're crushing it. I personally would never get a GR Corolla, not because it's not an amazing car. I very much love oversteer, drifting, that kind of thing. And with an all-wheel drive car, it's not the same. Like, can you technically get the car sideways, oversteer? Of course. But it's not the same as a front-engine rear-wheel drive or a mid-engine rear-wheel drive car. So I'm in that like rear-wheel drive group that like I love that driving dynamic, and also the styling to me doesn't speak to me personally. Funny Moments asks, who is my favorite YouTuber? I would say the YouTubers that I watch most consistently would be Savage Geese and Throttle House, which are car review channels. And I have been watching some more Nick Murray recently, who is a Porsche fanatic. I kind of jump around a lot. Lamb asks, what are your opinions on scribing? Worth it or better to search for something else? I think scribing is fantastic, actually. I think scribing is a great way to get exposure to the field. It teaches you skills, the terminology. When you come to med school, there's a lot of like a learning curve in just learning medical vocab and the terminology. So you'll have a leg up there, and you're getting exposure, you're understanding what the field's about. I think scribing is a definite good use of your time if you're a pre-med. All right, we'll do just a couple more questions. In 4 minutes, we will end the live stream. Thanks everyone for joining us. This has been fun. Ooh, this is a good question. How do you prevent stress and sleepless nights during medical school from ruining your relationships? So, I'm guessing this person is asking more of like a committed romantic relationship, because your general friendships and such, like, just be a nice person and don't project your stress and those issues you have during the medical training process on others, right? So that applies to both non-romantic and romantic relationships. But when it comes to romantic relationships, sleepless nights, like, don't be afraid to say like, hey, I like sleeping next to you, but during this next month, like, I'm on a really challenging rotation. I'm going to be losing a lot of sleep, and really making sure I sleep as well as possible. And sometimes when we are sleeping together, there's more tossing and turning and whatever. Like, if you just explain where you're coming from and you do it in a reasonable way, and you're thoughtful as to how that person is feeling during that process, and to make sure they feel heard and cared for as well, then that's the best you can do, man. Steve asks, do you have any advice for an unmatched ENT applicant wanting to go into anesthesia? So did you SOAP? Are you doing like a TY, prelim? It depends on how you spend that. So that's the biggest question, because if you go unmatched, then you get the opportunity to SOAP into a different program. And then if you didn't SOAP into anything, then during that year between March of match week and then September of submitting the next cycle's application for ERAS, then do research. That's the best thing you can do. Yeah. Good luck, man. Swapna Vaja asks, did you ever consider urology as a specialty? Not really. And I think urology is great. I think the jokes are awesome, the personalities are awesome, but the actual anatomy wasn't as interesting to me personally. And the types of cases, like, they're okay, just wasn't as exciting to me. Simple as that. Funny moments. Surgery golden resource. I don't know what that means. Like Pastana's notes if you're on your clinical rotation in med school, but if you're going to a specialty like in plastics, there are like for your away rotations and your sub-Is and stuff, there's different resources that are going to be more or less beneficial there. So it depends on the specialty. But yeah, for your MS3 rotation, gen surg rotation, Golion lectures, Pastana notes. I'm forgetting some of the other ones. I have to look back at my list. Jonathan Mendez, when will Day in the Life of a Neurosurgeon be available? I've been waiting ages, man. You know, we almost had an episode ready to shoot, but it fell through. So we'll do it in the future, man. Stay subscribed, but I can't make any promises. It's obviously very challenging to film these, not just from my perspective, but also making sure that the person who we are filming gets all the clearance, et cetera, that they need. So, all right. We'll do one more question. Renee asks, when you left the medical field, did you ever think or feel that you were going to lose a lot of wisdom or knowledge? I mean, you don't use it, you lose it. So one thing you know at the end of med school is that end of your third year is when you probably know the most about all the things within medicine than you ever will, unless you stay in a very broad specialty. Because most of us, we specialize, and when you specialize, you tend to forget a lot of like, oh, what was that diabetes management again? Or how do you manage hypertension? Or what happens here, what happens there? So at the end of your third year, you know a lot about various different things, and it tends to go narrow. So leaving plastic surgery is like, okay, cool, I'm going to be forgetting, losing a lot of the knowledge that I've accumulated within plastic surgery, but the other stuff within medicine, I was going to forget anyways. So it wasn't like I was losing a lot of knowledge beyond that. It was just the niche of plastic surgery. So, all right, guys, thanks for joining us on the second monthly AMA, and we'll be doing this every month moving forward. So make sure you are subscribed, and much love, my friends. I'll see you in the next one.